Before we wind up, I would, we have been talking a lot on the personal part of it, the user Twitter platform, our interactions as citizens of India. Uh, but we also have the enterprise tech aspect to it, and I know that on various fora we have interacted, and with other people also in your interactions, you have spoken a lot about cybercrime, about cyber security in enterprises. Um, the feeling that Subbu and me, we have discussed these issues at length, even on in earlier episodes. But we would love your thoughts on how companies are actually, looking at cybercrime and cyber security. Are they doing enough? Are they forthcoming? I know that there's a whole question about their brand reputation. There's a whole question about, not coming out in the open very easily because they feel that, okay, fine, it will have an impact on their business. But what's your sense on this?
See, there are two aspects to your question, and yes, it's a very, very important aspect. The first is uh, one, I personally feel that the time has now come for corporations to have people with cybersecurity or cyber law expertise on their boards, because they have, and every company needs it. Because everyone assumes that it's only a technology company which needs it and we don't need it. But every company which is dealing with sensitive data, sensitive personal information, or data which is proprietary, all of them need it. You know, and invariably, when I'm talking about my practice in cyber laws, and it's predominantly corporate, every alternate case is about a data breach. And out of those every alternate cases, 90% of the cases are what we call the enemy at the water cooler, right? An inside job. So you can try your best to put in just, people think, okay, draft some 20 policies and make it as tight as possible, it's done. It is unworkable. And this is what happened when COVID happened, because you needed policies which were workable in today's technology enabled world, which makes you work 24 by 7. You've come back home, you get a call from your boss, and the boss says, oh, that particular document, you have it on your computer, can you just send it? Or I can't find it on the mail, can you just send it? All of us have done it as bosses or as employees, right? Whichever way. When you are being asked to work from home, and this was not a situation pre-COVID, only post-COVID, right? It was very much there pre-COVID also. And you have policies which talk about you will not take data home, you will not access your company data from your personal computers, etc., etc. But you expect your employees to work 24 by 7. Let me tell you the other dangerous side of it. We talked about how the insider may be the person violating, right? But in 90% of cases, again, on the flip side, there will be where an employee has quit and joined a competitor. Everything is fine for 2 years, but when the competitor starts succeeding, suddenly things will be pulled out from their work time, saying you took this document home. The policy said you cannot move it out of a computer, company computer. Therefore, you violated the law, right? So you then have vindictive prosecutions. So you can't have both sides. You can't run a prison as a corporate entity, right? Or a corporate entity like a prison, more precisely. So you need a situation where you have a workplace which is conducive for harmonious working, which protects the rights of employees as well as the employers, both ways, right? And you also need processes which will ensure that entry and exit mechanisms are duly followed without it becoming a paranoid state. On one hand, you will have 30 different kinds of policies, including about the handling of passwords, etc. And for 10 days after somebody leaves, the password will not be changed.
Subbu is smiling out there because he wears two hats. One is, of course, as a veteran tech journalist, but more importantly, he's also an employee, and he knows that okay, we segregate our content here. So tomorrow, like say, if I leave or somebody else, I'll be accused. So
No, no,
Subbu,
see,
I need your thoughts on this.
Oh, and
what
one
you
final thought on this. So, one aspect is yes, companies need to take this very seriously, but there is another aspect which they all ignore, which is the compulsory reporting mechanism. So, India has a compulsory reporting regime which is mostly followed in its breach. Again, out of fear, because there is no trust. in the system. You're reporting to a government entity. It's a governance mechanism, but they don't understand it as such. And again, people question, but why should I report it? What are they going to do with my data? So does a government have to justify why they need your data for you to share it with them, when there is a law which says otherwise you're liable for 2 years imprisonment, or that you can be, you know so ultimately there is, but again, in this kind of instances also, since governments now have to learn to work in tandem with corporates, we have to outgrow our license raj mentality. We are all from the generation which has traversed both sides of this divide, right? So we have to get out of that mentality, and we have to assume, and I say this even to lawyers, I've seen my seniors do this. I myself probably did it in my early days. I don't know. You have to do all this to the client, right? And if the client asks why, because I said so kind of attitude, it will not cut ties any longer. Today, even a client wants to know, why are you asking me to do all this? And you have to patiently explain if you really want the action points to be effectively carried out. Similarly, it also will actually help government for better governance and for better compliance if they explain why they need it, but more importantly, what are the measures they are putting in place to protect this data that is being shared, so that a company's value is not adversely affected because of a leak from their side, right? So both sides, there is a lot of distrust, there is a lot of skepticism in government systems and the systemic processes, and therefore, consequent to distrust, either people don't report, people don't comply, all kinds of things happen. Or, as you have seen, Subbu, people think they can insist on what they want, and too bad for you if the law says otherwise, right? So
Exactly.
today we have to know how to use existing systems effectively. Only if we use existing systems, if new laws come in also, we can use it better. If existing systems we don't know how to use, how does it help us if 20 more laws come? So if you had a Nirbhaya case and then you had changes, 2013 amendments to criminal law, and women are still not safe, merely spouting words about women's safety doesn't help anybody.
That
Show
is
it
that is
in
ex-
action.
that is
So be
exactly
it
why I was saying this.
technology,
Yeah.
be it privacy, be it new laws, be it applying old laws. All I am looking for, and my top wish list always was and remains, effective enforcement. And until such
Your,
time, let's hope for responsible
yeah.
technology.
So your quick thoughts as an employer this time?
No, see, every employer, well, most of the employers believe that it can't happen to me. First, we believe that it happens to others. We are safe, we have put in everything, so it doesn't happen to me. Point number one. Point number two, the minute something happens, okay, we don't look at our systems, we don't look at our processes, we start looking at who has done it. Okay, that's the second problem. Third problem, even if we do come to know who has done it, do we then follow the process that is set out? And do we go the whole hog? For example, if there's a data theft, do we first report it to the police station? Do we file an FIR? No, we don't. We believe, let's not do this, let's not complicate the matter. So that's the word we use. Let's not complicate the issue. No, no, you're not complicating the issue, you're supposed to solve the problem. And I completely agree with Nappinai. See, there is a huge amount of mistrust between the people on one side and the establishment on the other. It is very easy for us to sit here and say it is all the establishment's fault. It is not, right? A lot of responsibility, a lot of ownership has to be taken by us, which at least as employers, look, the reason why I'm saying employers or individuals, employers have more resources, individuals don't. So employers therefore have a higher responsibility to follow process. And as long as we don't do that, I remember this uh, many years ago. There was a Raymond ad that came once, you know, which said very simply, "How do you expect your child to follow your advice and ignore your example?"
That's a good one.
You know, So as long as we don't do it ourselves, how do we expect anybody else to do it? Like Nipana was saying, yeah, we can go on saying women's empowerment, algorithms, new law, IT Act, data privacy, all that will come to a naught unless and until we as corporate citizens decide to follow the rules that are laid out for us and stop trusting to some extent. Let the other guys betray the trust first. Why do we assume that he's going to betray the trust? That's the whole problem.
A more human approach. That's what you advocate.
I have a
And I
very
think
simple formula for corporates, okay? Because you're right, 90% to 95% of cases I handle, they don't want to file complaints. They don't want to go to court. So the formula is 4 Ps, right? Prevent, protect, preserve, prosecute. And it is sequential. So you have to first take your steps for preventing and protecting against data breaches, violations, cybersecurity incidents, everything, right? The preserve aspect is actually, I like to use a P there also, therefore I'm using that, but it actually comes in multiple usage, you know. So the first part is, of course, if a violation has happened, and you will see whether the violation is with respect to an individual, it is a corporate or a nation state, the requirement is actually the same, which is resilience or a quick bounce back. The individual wants a quick takedown, protect the content from leaking further. Same with an economic offense, where they want to ensure that their proprietary data has not been compromised further. That it has been compromised, they already know, but they have to block it at the earliest possible instance. And again, for a nation state, they have to, one, protect and also bounce back, you know, come back into action at the earliest possible time. So this is where a process driven mechanism works, to ensure that there is a stepwise thing you can follow. And as you rightly said, what is there on paper may be very different from what happens practically. So that presence of mind becomes more an individual aspect rather than process driven. What we really have to move forward is to ensure that it becomes process driven. And the next aspect of preserve is know how to retain your electronic evidence, the trail, because it always gets messed up and then the last part gets messed up. You can decide whether you want to prosecute or not later also. Resilience and bounce back is the more immediate requirement. But whilst doing that, ensure that you preserve so that you also preserve your right to prosecute later. And finally, on the prosecute part, especially for individuals, I always tell them, please prosecute, because then you will protect yourself against further harm and you will also protect others falling victim.
others, exactly,
You know,
exactly.
this for economic offenses, I tell corporates, please prosecute, because as you pointed out, Subbu, early in the discussion, you said that you need to set a precedent, you know, so that the precedent will act as a deterrent. And that is important for corporates to show that they treat their policies very seriously. So if that message doesn't go out, then you are likely to, you're otherwise going to have a paranoid situation where everybody is supposed to be scared, but nobody will comply. You're better off saying, I know now that I cannot take data. I know now to understand that what work I'm doing belongs to the company, so I should not take it away when I'm leaving the company. And that if I do it, I may be prosecuted, right? So with that knowledge comes a much higher level of deterrence than all the policies you put in place. So therefore, economy should prosecute. When it comes to nation states, it's a disaster because we still haven't even put in place effective mechanisms for that. So we will reserve that for another day. But remember the 4 Ps, even though you may come to the last later, prepare yourself for the rest. That way you will actually save a lot more money than what you would by going low in terms of the prevention and protection aspect and then spending so much on prosecution and not really getting much.
So, friends, we would have loved this discussion to continue, and I know basically there's no end to this topic. I hope you all have benefited from this, from the insights that Napanai has shared with us. I think the take homes are very clear that ignorantia juris non excusat, kind of ignorance of law is no excuse.
Absolutely.
So you need to brush up your knowledge of law. Remember that while we can always sit across the negotiating table to discuss, but there's a time to understand the difference when you want to sit at the negotiating table and when you need to prosecute, so that you can set up a precedent. But yes, I think it's very, very clear that we need to be aware of what's happening in this country. Technology and law are going hand in hand. It's a very, very important topic for all of us and quite an eye opener. So, Napanai, thank you very much for your insights. Thank you for being on this show. And viewers, if you like the insights, please subscribe to this channel and look forward to having you all back again next week on the Weekly High with LSD show. Thank you.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you, Nappinai. Thank you. Bye-bye.